This episode of the A.T.TIPSCAST is sponsored by TextHelp, provider of the award-winning literacy solution Read and Write Gold. Is your child or student struggling with reading and writing? Read and Write Gold from TextHelp can help. Read and Write Gold's text-to-speech software is for individuals with reading or writing difficulties, those with learning disabilities such as dyslexia, and English language learners. Its customizable toolbar integrates with common applications and provides support tools for reading, writing, studying, and research. The TextHelp web apps allow users to access their favorite read and write features in the cloud, anywhere, anytime. And have you heard about the new I Read Write app for the iPad? TextHelp's newest app makes reading easier and ensures accurate writing as you use your iPad for school, work, or leisure. To learn how the Read and Write family of products can help your struggling student, visit texthelp.com or call 1-888-248-0652. That's 1-888-248-0652. And as a special offer from now until May 31st, 2013, you can receive 10% off any online order of Read and Write Gold by entering the code A.T.TIPS13, save 10 upon checkout. That's A.T.TIPS, the numeral 13, save the numeral 10. Order your copy today.
I'm programming. Let's program with Scratch. I made a bat fly. I love programming.
Welcome to the A.T.TIPSCAST, exploring and investigating the implementation of assistive technology in public schools. I'm your host, Chris Bouguet. This is episode 117, recorded on May 25th, 2013. A few weeks ago, I attended a professional development workshop put on by one of my colleagues, Keith Hicks. Keith is the technology resource teacher at Woodgrove High School in Purcellville, Virginia, and the workshop was on a free web-based tool called Scratch. The workshop had me engaged the entire time, both by the content and the style of the presentation. The entire workshop had us using Scratch to actually create short, fully functioning programs, each with our own individualized, customized flair. As I participated in the training, my mind was racing with how this tool could be used by any student, including students with disabilities, as a totally immersive, functional, meaningful activity that would help practice and reinforce a wide range of skills and abilities, including sequencing, logic, reasoning, problem solving, visual spatial relationships, temporal concepts, determination, creativity, and the list goes on. I asked Keith if we could get together for an interview so he could share a little bit of his experience with Scratch on the A.T.TIPScast. He agreed, so please enjoy A.T.TIP number 358, Scratch.
My grandma is old-fashioned. Dad says they broke the mold, whatever that means. She's got an old gas stove, it's like a treasure trove. She lights with a match. She's making everything, and I mean everything, from scratch.
Thanks for being here on the A.T.TIPScast. Now tell us about Scratch. What is Scratch?
Scratch is an online programming environment developed by the Lifelong Kindergarten Group at MIT. It's really geared towards younger kids. My own daughter participates in it, and she's 10, and it's all drag and drop. So, and really the way it's made or developed, it kind of lends the kids to sort of think about sequencing, sort of critical thinking skills, math skills, that sort of thing. But the interface is very easy to use, and I've become a big fan of it.
Now, when I first heard of Scratch, it was a software install. So it was something that I said, I have to install it. It was free to use. It's always been free to use.
Right.
But it was an install, and I thought, well, I can't really use that with my teachers because we'd have to go through some whole process of getting that installed onto computers. You know, we have a process. So I kind of put it on the back burner, like I'm not going to start to explore it. But then it became web-based, and you did a presentation, and that's when I went to the presentation. That was really my first introduction to Scratch. And so the layout, the way I saw it was, there was like a canvas, right? Mm-hmm. And then a place where you do the programming. And the programming part kind of looked like It reminded me of like puzzle pieces that you're putting together.
Yeah, that's a very good analogy. In fact, I think that was the idea, was to make it like puzzle pieces, and they all snap together. And some pieces snap within other pieces, so they have different shapes, that sort of thing.
So the way you put the puzzle pieces together impacts what's happening on the canvas.
Sure.
So that was my introduction, was actually sitting in your presentation about it, our workshop about it. But what was your introduction? How did you really get involved with Scratch?
Well, 2 years ago, my daughter, who was 9 at the time, asked me to start a STEM class, a science club for her and her friends. And I didn't do it the first year, but I did do it this past year. And as part of the whole technology aspect of STEM, I went ahead and purchased computers. And my wife and I, we bought 8 computers, but computers are a lot cheaper than they used to be.
Sure.
Because our first computer we bought, which did nothing, was $2,400. And so I went out and bought 8 computers for ballpark about what 12, 15 years ago one computer would have cost. Mm-hmm. So it's not that big of an investment. So anyway, I bought the stuff, and the second session we did during the winter was programming in Scratch. And we used the 1.4 version, which was the older version, the install version. And then we did another session in the spring, which we got to use the new 2.0 version, the web-based version. And there's a big difference. But, I'm such an advocate of kids learning by doing. And that's really how I got involved with Scratch, because it allows kids to learn from doing.
So they go in and they kind of just experiment and play with it, that sort of thing? Or did you have sort of, let's try and create something. Let's create a snowman or something. I don't know what.
Yeah, I've been reading books on the project-based learning ideas. And so I try to come up with goals for them, but I try not to tell them how to get there. Mm-hmm. I introduce one aspect of some tools for them to sort of think about using, but I didn't give them the exact route on how to get there.
Just let them create for the most part.
Sure.
You guide them, not tell them this is how it has to be.
Yeah. I talked to my wife about this interview last night. We all talk to our wives, right?
Sure,
yeah,
all the time.
I know you do.
I don't do anything without my wife.
So I said, and you had sent me some questions, and I really thought about this. I said, I've taught chemistry for 1,000 years. And the mark of success in chemistry for me has always been if I can take a group of 30 kids, and at the end of the school year they can do a problem, and they all do it exactly the same way, and they all show me the same steps with the same units and the same labels and the same answer, I've been successful. But really, that's not learning.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, it's really not.
Right.
It's functional. It works. It's easy.
It's what we've always done in education.
Mm-hmm. But Scratch, you just give the kids an endpoint. Here, this is an objective. You can even figure out how to fulfill that objective. What do you want the objective to be for you? And then you can start building a program. Doesn't mean you can't help them. Doesn't mean you're not there to support them, but it does mean that you allow them to sort of develop their own understanding of where they want to go.
Now, what has the feedback been from the people participating in the club, your daughter and the friends? What kind of comments have they made, or anything that jumps out?
They've loved it. I mean, I have parents who want more of this sort of thing. In the county, we're doing it this summer for summer camp. And it's interesting because they filled up instantly. Within a day, a couple of the camps were filled up.
Oh, that's awesome.
It is awesome. And but the kids really, really enjoy it. You were in the class, we did.
Yeah. And
that's the way the kids react. You guys are just like the kids.
Yeah, our faces light up and like, oh, this is fun. Let's do this. Let's make something.
Yeah. And that's how the kids react to it. And the parents, we did at the end of our first session, we had the kids present to the parents. And the parents were really cool about it. Yeah. In fact, I had one parent who's a teacher here in the county. And she goes, oh my goodness, she goes, for the first time I saw my son learning the way you're supposed to learn.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I know that night I went back and to the house, and I have 2 kids and put them right on the computer and said, "You got to see this. You got to see this." And then there were my daughter, who's 5. I'm programming.
Yes.
I'm programming. Just so excited, because she understands by playing on the iPad and playing on the computer. She understands that there's something going on here. Someone creates this, and now she's creating something. It's just something very rudimentary. She made a bat fly back and forth on the screen, But that's the fundamentals of what could grow to be something way bigger.
And in a global aspect, we've got a lot of problems to solve. And we need these kids to think creatively. We need them to think sort of on their own, outside of that chemistry, fill in the blanks, get the right units, get the right label, and you're done.
Coming up with the answers on their own without having it scripted. So let me ask, if you were to start a club, or if you were a teacher that was hearing this and being interested in, I want to experiment with Scratch in my classroom, what are some getting started sort of tips you might give them?
Well, of course, I didn't have anyone to guide me. And if you do it that way, if you just go in and start doing, it doesn't make any sense at first. So I bought a book. And there are some good books out. I don't think there's any books out on the new version, though. But the MIT site does have a lot of resources on the new version already. If you want to get started, okay, don't think that the very first time you do it, it's just really going to work. It takes a while for it to become fun. And you take those few baby steps and start to figure things out, and then all of a sudden it really does become fun. And that should be your expectation. I've written some real decent programs at this point. And the nice thing about Scratch is it really does offer a challenge, even if you've done programming before. But if you've never done programming before, it comes very quickly. I think if you're sort of willing to do the logical, sequential, step thing.
Like I said, I think I noticed that there was some tutorials or some getting started, like, here, try and make this sort of thing, like you did in our workshop. It was, let's see if you can draw a square, and we started out very simple, and then you build upon that, which it seems to me like that would be how you'd learn to do programming. Start something simple and keep growing, and let me see what I can do next, and a lot of trial and error. Oh, what if I drop this thing here? What is it going to do? Oh, that's not what I wanted it to do. Let me take that out. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And my daughter, who's 10, she will get online and do Scratch just in her free time sometimes. The other day she was writing something. She needed a random number generator, and I thought I'd have to show her how to do it again. No.
So she just went in and created it.
Yeah.
So, just for fun.
Well, I mean, with the program, the random numbers, it's in there, to create that.
That's awesome. So let me ask, have you thought about how this, because you work at the secondary level.
I do, yes.
Your daughter's at the elementary level.
She is.
Have you thought about how a teacher would take this and integrate it into the classroom? Because you've been using it as kind of as clubs, right? Right,
yeah, I would say we're using it more as clubs, although I did use it to introduce concepts also.
Sure.
And I don't know if I shared this within our meeting, but for instance, the concept of gravity. Everybody knows about gravity, okay? But sort of look at gravity mathematically is an entirely different idea. And so in our club, we would go through and analyze programs. Look at the steps, see what this does. And in one, we had a ball that would go up and back down. And in there was something that was being subtracted all the time. And I really didn't want to tell the kids what that was for. And then one of the kids goes, "That's gravity." And I was like, "Yes, that's gravity, yes."
You saw the light bulb go off, and they could explain what it was. That's just amazing. Now, I think you showed us one on temperature too, right? How the relationship between Celsius and Fahrenheit or something?
I think probably the one I showed you was the relationship between density and temperature.
Okay.
Was that the little balls go up and down?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, that's a program I wrote. And you pick a temperature, and the masses have different densities. So as the temperature changes, of course the density of the liquid they're in changes too. So some of the balls start to float up, some sink, and then as the temperature changes more, different things happen.
So teachers could use the programs that someone else wrote as a simulation sort of activity. Go and look at this, and here's a simulation. That's definitely something I think teachers could wrap their brains around. Just go to the website and use this as a simulation, just like any other website.
Right.
But it's really more powerful than that, because it's really about the creating of the programming itself, right?
Sure. And the kids can go in. The new version has a function called remixing. So you can go on open up a program, and then remix it and make it your own. And Scratch has community guidelines that are fairly specific. But one is, you always give credit to the person you're remixing from, that sort of thing. But then they can go in and change values. So for instance, if somebody found the one that I wrote on the density, and they wanted to go in and change some of the values, they can. Now they can't change my program, but they can change their own remixed version.
Gotcha. So it's almost like they make a clone of yours, and then they can play with that clone without affecting the original.
Right. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Okay. And like you said, there's a community that has evolved around Scratch, and so people help each other out. How does that work?
Well, it's almost like a social media type environment that you can follow other people making different programs, and the people involved are called scratchers. So if you program a scratcher, you're a scratcher.
So you're a scratcher.
Yeah. And the environment is real supportive. You always have some people that aren't going to be positive, and that's we ran into that actually with some of the kids I was working with. One of the kids goes, "Mr. Hicks, that one has a bad word in it." And all I did was say, "You know what? That's not how we act." I said, "Let's go ahead and report it," because there's a report function. Mm-hmm. And so we reported. I said, "We're just not going to go back there."
Right.
And that was okay.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. It's a teachable learning moment. That student has probably never even heard about reporting something before, right? I mean, not on the computer environment,
right.
But here, this is how we do it when there's someone acting inappropriately.
Right. But we also, kids would write programs and other people would comment on their program, and they would give constructive criticism. Now, sometimes you could tell it was somebody who had some programming background going, "Well, if you used a variable like this, then you could do this in a lot fewer steps." Mm-hmm. And they go, "What's he mean?" Well, this is what he means, but you don't have to do it. You get to make your own programs. But in general, it's a really, really positive environment for the kids because most of the comments are just that, positive and useful.
Awesome. So when I was sitting there in your in the workshop, and I was thinking, okay, what other types of students would use this? Immediately, what came to mind to me was as extension activities, or a break activity for students in the autism programs, where they could maybe go. I mean, it wouldn't be just autism; it'd be any program. But you go and you're going to work your the Google 20% time, or you need to take a break. You go over and you work on Scratch, and this is your project that you're working on maybe for a couple months, or whatever, however long the duration is. But you go and you take your break and you're just working on Scratch and working in your program. Now it's time to go back and we're going to do the next activity. And maybe 3 or 4 times a day you get on in 15-minute intervals or 20-minute intervals to work on Scratch. And there's so many students, like I said, really autism is what was flashing in my brain when I saw the program, but really it's any student. But that could think at first start linearly and then move around it to have these relationship values. So anyway, did you have any ideas about who could use it or why you'd use it?
Actually, we here at the high school we have some kids who are lower level learners, and I have thought that it would be appropriate for some of these kids to use to learn different concepts in math and science. And have talked to one of our teachers about this already. The last time when I went down and talked to her about it, the site was down, so I couldn't show it to her. But yeah, I think I'm sort of headed, where you are that very thing. I did do some work at one of the elementary schools, and I had a kid that had autism. And that's not my domain, but it was okay. In fact, two of the boys, one was this young man with the autism, and another boy, they were mortal enemies. In fact, both parents had warned me. They said, both those boys will be in there. Keep them as far apart from each other as you can. And it actually turned out to be okay. They're like, oh, we're going to be friends now because we're doing Scratch.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And that really did happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did they do that, did they do that through the community where they're commenting on, or just sitting side by side, they'd come over and you had to, wanted to get up and show what they've done in Scratch and they'd make comments? I mean, how did the social interaction work?
The kids moved around the class that I was doing. It wasn't a big group, and it's interesting. Boys respond so differently to it than girls do, because I've worked mostly with girls, but this group was just boys, and they tend to be a little more competitive.
Really? Okay.
But they also would go from, one would say, I need some help, and someone would go over and help them out. Show them, well, maybe try it this way. So there's a lot of that, and I think everyone had something to offer in that environment.
Yeah, it sounds like just this awesome collaborative experience for the kids.
Yeah, it was. I mean, but it's not all about collaboration, because sometimes kids need to work by themselves.
Absolutely, and it gives you that flexibility.
And they did get to work by themselves too.
You sit there, kind of get in your own head about how's the best way to do this problem. I want to create something on the screen. I want to work through the problem. I'm going to try trial and error, and I have avenues to get help if I need it. I can go online to the community, or I can talk to the people, my instructor, or really facilitator more than instructor.
Yeah, I think so.
And then, or ask my buddy who's sitting next to me, hey, I'm stuck here. Can you help me work through this problem? So it's a cool thing. Any final thoughts about Scratch that you'd like people to know?
I just think it's a really good tool for kids in the 4th and 5th grade to start learning how to put together ideas in a way that makes sense, in a sequential manner, to sort of develop those critical thinking skills. And I know those sound like buzzwords. They do.
Yeah.
But it works.
Yeah. They're meaningful buzzwords.
And it changes the way kids think about things. So I'm a big fan.
From scratch. From scratch. From scratch.
I'd like to send out a big thanks to Keith for taking the time to participate in the interview. If you want to know more about Scratch, check it out at scratch.mit.edu. That's scratch.mit.edu. Right from the main page, you'll see a link for educators that takes you to a page full of ideas for how other educators are using and implementing Scratch. There's links to other educators in the Scratch community, a curriculum guide, and many, many, many other resources. I hope you take a look at Scratch and consider exploring it with your students. Now, before we sign off, I have just a few quick announcements. First, Beth Poss and I will be presenting at the Texas Assistive Technology Network Conference on June 11th. We're presenting all day on Mission Possible, Proliferating a Culture of Universal Design for Learning. If you're attending that conference, we'd love it if you stop by to see us. Also, on July 19th, myself and Mark Nichols will be doing the opening keynote session for a special one-day conference about differentiation, hosted by the Virginia Society for Technology and Education. The event is called Bridging the Gap, and it's taking place at the Northern Virginia campus at Shenandoah University in Loudoun County, Virginia. There's a $50 fee, but man, it's going to be worth it. There's going to be multiple sessions on ways to differentiate instruction. There will be practical sessions about designing lesson plans, 3D printing and the makerspace movement, digital storytelling, using audio in the classroom, technology to support executive functioning, gesture-based learning, adapted books, exploring the accessibility features in iOS devices, implementing QR codes and augmentative reality applications, and much, much more. If there's any way you can make it, I promise you it will be a great time. Oh, and did I mention Keith will be there too, sharing Scratch. You can find out more about the event at bit.ly/BTG VSTE 2013. That's BTG VSTE 2013. Of course, I'll have links to everything over at the blog, AT.TIPSCAST.com. Until next time, may all your interventions be inclusive, may all your strategies be supportive, and may you start creating programs from scratch.